What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 324 of AskGSM here today for Wednesday, February 12th, 2020. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well at facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Leave your question on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Without further ado, we're going to jump right into it. No intro this week. I have a lot of questions to get to, and I don't want to make this thing 2 hours. The weird thing is that no matter how early I record these shows, a lot of the time, the issue isn't processing the video, it's uploading the video. And it might be my Wi-Fi, I don't know. I've rebooted it a bunch. It goes in and out. Sometimes these videos will be uploaded literally like within an hour. So it went up relatively sooner last week compared to usual, as opposed to like 7 or 8 or 9 o'clock. And then there will be other times, because these videos are so long, they're like an hour, it'll take like literally 3 times the amount of that time to be uploaded to YouTube. It'll take like 3 or 4 hours, and I'm like, what the fuck? So hopefully it's not a case with today's episode. Obviously, you guys have a better idea of that than I do, because you're listening to this at whatever time, but I'm trying to fix that in the future. Anyway, first question comes from Elaine the Y from YouTube. Their first question was, I've seen a lot of discussion over how polarizing the Cody MJF segment on AEW Dynamo was, which, as someone who did like the segment, I had to take a step back and understand some of the criticism. The biggest thing, I think, is that like a lot of Cody's work, it's drenched in old-school intense violence and melodrama, which to some people is a turnoff, especially when asking them to get invested in a long, story-driven, non-wrestling segment as a main event. I remember someone here asked some questions about how wrestling promotions approach casual audiences a few weeks ago. So I guess to bring back that discussion, is it worthwhile on AEW's part to update 70s, 80s, NWA stories for TNT in 2020? Does that content have a place outside of throwback shows like NWA Power? Now, this is a good question. There was a lot of controversy surrounding the Cody MJF segment, and I thought you were going to mention something completely different that I saw online from a vast minority on Twitter last week, which I'm glad you didn't go in that direction. I'm not even going to mention it, but I saw someone say, this whipping thing because it's Black History Month, fill in the blanks, which was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. Thankfully, that got, washed out pretty quickly. that wasn't really discussed among the wrestling community because no one really made that connection at all because it's a stretch. But anyway, though, I can see what you're saying. I understand where you're coming from. I like the segment too. I had no issues with it. I feel like people are reaching a bit. Now, this is something you can't fake. He got his back thrashed by those belt shots. And it's something where if it's not done often, I really don't have a problem with it. I'm going to be honest with you. If it's done, like, this isn't something you could do on Raw. Like, I mean, technically they kind of did do it a little bit, but not really. I mean, this was done in a different way. Shawn Michaels whipped Jericho with his own belt multiple times during that unsanctioned match they had back at Unforgiven 2008, and that was right after the product won PG. So, I mean, then again, they had that brutal Hell in a Cell match between Edge and Undertaker that same year, right after they went PG. I mean, that's a different story because they had just gone PG at that point. But this was like a month or two into that, and they were still doing it. So, I'm not exactly sure if it's against WWE's morals to be doing stuff like this. But honestly, again, if it's not done often, I think it works. The only other time I've seen something like this, I know it was done in ECW, I think, years ago with like Tommy Dreamer and maybe the Sandman or Raven or whatever. Ring of Honor did it about a year or two ago with Bully Ray and Flip Gordon. I thought that angle was well done, and I thought it worked well here too, because Cody is so desperate to get his hands on MJF, he will literally do anything, including enduring the belt shots. MJF was great. He was cocky early on, and then he saw that Cody wanted to continue, so he got pissed. So he just continued to whip him and whip him and whip him, and then he like low-blowed him before he scurried out of the ring at the end of the segment. You had Arn Anderson out there. You had the Young Bucks out there, Brandy Rhodes, which, thank God, which I'll get to. The Nightmare Collective crap is over. Rejoice. Thank God. You had her. You can't really do the segment. You can't really do a segment like that without his own wife at ringside, you know? His brother, Dustin Rhodes. I thought it was a really well-done segment. Again, I really don't mind it. I mean, I'm not a casual fan, so I can't speak for casual fans when I say, oh, this isn't really something that would appeal to a casual fan. You turn on the channel, if you're not a wrestling fan, you see someone getting whipped with a belt. I think that's enough to hook you in. Now, again, they shouldn't be doing stuff just to hook viewers, because that would entail, like, shit right out of the Attitude Era, having the fucking women parade around with no clothes on, drinking beer. I guess Hangman's already doing that anyway, but, dropping expletives every 2 seconds. That's how you hook viewers. That's not necessarily a good way of hooking viewers. But in this case, it's an angle that's not done often, which is good because it is brutal and it can be a little violent. I didn't really think this was too violent at all. I mean, it was uncomfortable to an extent to watch, but not to the point where, like, oh, I'm not going to watch this. Like, if they were having the guy, like, pull his own... honestly, I'm going to be honest with you. Looking at the independent scene and some of the dumb shit that they do, like fucking Joey Janela and all this other shit, that is more uncomfortable to watch than anything else. Not this stuff. I thought this was honestly fine. It's not ideal, but for the story they're telling, it made sense. It's all about the story and what they're going for within the context of the story they're telling at the moment. It worked amazingly well. I thought it was a great segment. What I don't want to fucking see is Joey Janela out there with a fucking... with his dick in a toaster, or Darby Allin using barbed wire and whatever. I mean, they're doing a lot of dumb shit with these hardcore matches. That's fucking dumb. They're just doing that for a pop. No real reason at all. That's uncomfortable. That makes me not want to watch the match. That I just think is dumb. Maybe that's just me, but some of the shit I see on these independent promotions, specifically Joey Janela's promotion, stuff that Joey Ryan does, that's just fucking stupid. So I'm going to disagree with you. I thought the segment was great. I know you said you liked it, but I honestly don't really see much of an issue with it at all. I think you might be in the minority there. And I think other people should take exception to other shit that AEW does with their hardcore stuff. Not so much recently, but honestly, Ambrose and Moxley and Omega, the stuff they were doing in their hardcore match. Again, I feel like you can kind of take your same argument here. I mean, I'm not saying you didn't have an issue with it, but I like the match, but I can absolutely see why people had a problem with it because they went a little too far with the glass. That is unnecessary. That's dumb violence. And that's not a Cody issue. That's an AEW issue. So I didn't really think it was much of a problem here because it made sense with the story they're telling. But in the Moxley Omega match, that was just stupid. And they've done a lot of stupid stuff they should probably pull back on before it gets, a little too much. Elena's second question here. Speaking of trying to understand criticisms on wrestling segments that I like, I see people calling Once Upon a Time on the Dirt Sheet skit another segment of unfunny WWE comedy, but I don't know. I think it's too well done for no reason and too packed with hysteric references. Example, John Laurinaitis saying the WWE Universe is going to dig John Morrison when he was the one who kayfabe fired him in the first place, for it to be dismissed so easily. Honestly, I didn't even really pick up that reference, I'm going to be honest with you. I know comedy is subjective and all, but it doesn't it have more effort than people are giving it credit for? I'm not really sure what you're going for with your question here. I'm not sure if you're saying that it wasn't funny, or that it wasn't funny, or that people are saying that it wasn't funny and they deserve more credit. I'm not really sure what you're asking here. Here's my 2 cents on it. I enjoy the segment. I like the Dirt Sheet. I thought it was well done. The thing is, though, yeah, you're right, it was a little too well done. But at the same time, though, I have no issue with that. It's 2020. It's not the Dirt Sheet circa 2008 where they're doing dumb comedy segments. I just binge-watched a bunch of episodes of the Dirt Sheet with Alexis yesterday. And a lot of those episodes had terrible production because it was 2008. They didn't really have the resources to film this type of stuff like they did for Once Upon a Time on the Dirt Sheet, which I thought was great. I saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I can get the references. I got what they were going for the most part. I didn't get the John Laurinaitis thing. But seeing Lance Storm pop up was cool. The Bruce Lee thing I thought was funny. I got it. I understood it. I thought it was funny. I thought it was better than most comedy that WWE does. And at the same time, too, that's the type of comedy they go for. Where the fuck were these people 12 years ago? If you thought this wasn't funny, go back and watch the old episodes of The Dirt Sheet. They are way worse than that shit. So I honestly feel like this wasn't, unfunny WWE comedy. I feel like it was something that John Morrison and The Miz came up with themselves. They had a lot of creative freedom with that original show. I know a dozen years can change a lot, but I feel like they were given input here with what they wanted to do with this segment, and they did it. And I liked it for what it was. Not everyone has to like it. I can understand why some people saw it as being unfunny. But then go back and watch the old episodes of the Dirt Sheet. They weren't laugh out loud hilarious. So I'm not really sure what people were expecting there. I'm not even really sure what your question is, but that's just my 2 cents in the segment. Their third question here. Shayna Baszler biting Becky Lynch's neck is not a choice I would have gone for, nor the excessive follow-up segments. Ever wonder how many wrestlers have driven back to arenas and ambulances? But it can all work if Shayna is presented as a threat to Becky. Maybe lean in on the relation to Ronda Rousey, or hell, lean in on Shayna being a vampire. Imagine if Edge and Christian come up to her to offer a good vampire recovery program. Where is Gangrel at? Maybe the Brood can reunite just so Randy Orton can come take them all out at once. First of all, to answer your Gangrel question, he popped up at a Ring of Honor show. No shit, he did, in a Battle Royal on Sunday. Granted, I mean, obviously he didn't win, nor should he have. But it was just funny to see him because I haven't seen the guy on like a major show in years and years and years. I actually met him at an indie show like 4 years ago. Really nice guy. I'm not sure when the last time WWE brought him back was. I'm sure he was at the Hall of Fame when Edge got inducted years ago, but that was like 2012. Anyway, the vampire stuff, a lot of questions I got about this. So I'll just tie this into the next question from John Ritlin at Reborn Again. Check out his YouTube channel, great content. His question was, one of his first questions was, the Shayna Becky neck biting thing. What was that all about? Is she becoming a vampire for no reason? Should we expect a Wolfman or even Mummy-inspired gimmick in the coming weeks? A bit sarcastic, admittedly, but that Shayna stuff was odd. So, again, got a lot of questions on the Shayna Becky stuff. First of all, cool to see Shayna on Raw. Her debut, I felt, was overshadowed, might be the right word, by the neck biting shit. I feel like this would have been considered a cooler moment if they didn't go for that. And it's hilarious to me because like Vince will go on these conference calls talking about the Q1 financial report, shit like that. And he'll be like, oh, AEW, it's too much blood and guts. And then like we're more family-friendly, wholesome entertainment. And then they do shit like this. I mean, obviously it wasn't real blood, but it's not intense. It's not violent like like you were saying earlier, Elena, with the whipping thing. This was just stupid. This was just dumb. I mean, it was very buzzworthy because it got people talking. I'm not a fan of it per se. I thought it was kind of stupid. I saw, maybe it was Renee Young, or maybe Paige actually. They talked about it on Backstage last night. And Punk was there, and surprisingly, they didn't rip on this. Because, I mean, it wasn't as bad as the dog food shit. And Paul Heyman knows what he's doing with this stuff. I guess it was inspired by Classy Freddie Blassie, because Paul Heyman's a big fan of his. So I guess that's where it came from. Paige made the comparison to Mike Tyson when he would like bite people's ears off and shit like that, or bite people's ears. I mean, it wasn't an ear though; it was a fucking neck. So it was. I mean, it's better than biting her leg like a dog, but I don't know. The whole thing was a little weird. The neck thing will inspire vampire-themed, ideas from fans for Shayna Baszler. That's not exactly how I would have debuted her. It could have been way worse. I do love the idea of a Shayna Becky feud. I mean, we've been saying this for months now. This was hardly a surprise. It was more a matter of when and not if Shayna would show up on Raw. Just because, I mean, what else do you do with Becky going into WrestleMania? Have her face fucking Natalya again? Get out of here. So, I mean, that didn't really surprise me. It was cool to see it. But the approach they're taking with this angle is absolutely questionable. And even less so the vampire stuff, because they can always, bounce back by having her just beat the shit out of Becky next week or the week after that. I'm not really concerned about the neck biting thing. I feel like it was a one and done type thing. As long as it doesn't become her gimmick full time, because Shayna was great in NXT by just being a badass. She just sells herself as a badass. She doesn't need to, bite people's necks. Just break people's arms and do shit like that. That's all you really need. You don't have to fucking reinvent the wheel here, people. Just have her go out there, break an arm or two, and then you're sold, That didn't really bother me as much as what they did with Becky in the ambulance shit. Like you said, there's so many wrestlers, I feel like, that steal ambulances. Dean Ambrose being one. I feel like Stone Cold Steve Austin did it a time or two. He did it a time or two where he would steal the ambulance and then drive back to the arena in the ambulance. Why? I don't know. Why even bother going to the hospital in the first place or the local medical facility? The whole thing was just weird. That really bothered me more. I mean, it didn't make me hate Becky, but it feels like they're making her more unlikable. And I've seen people say, oh, it's just their man character. Not really. I mean, it is, yeah, but she wasn't doing cringeworthy stuff like this before. And she's been the man now for, a year and a half? She wasn't doing dumb shit like this before. It feels like they're trying now a little too hard to make her the next Stone Cold Steve Austin, which I can see the similarities, but it's just not happening. Like, that's not going to happen. this was just stupid. They made her look like completely unlikable. Not the first time. Again, she beat up like Fit Finlay about like maybe 6-7 months ago on Raw when she was feuding with, I think, Natalya. She like interrupted her training session. They made her kind of unlikable with that segment. And she like beat the shit out of Fit Finlay for no reason. And then she beat up these poor, medics that were driving the ambulance and trying to help her out, and she fucking pushed them to the... It didn't make her look like an anti-hero or a tweener. It just made her look like a fucking bitch. So I don't know what they're going for here. Shayna should obviously be the full-fledged heel. I'm not honestly opposed, like I said before, to turning Becky heel. Maybe, I said this last week, but maybe after WrestleMania, because she has to be the babyface in this feud. I mean, Shayna's not going to be babyface fucking biting people's necks and making them bleed. I mean, that much is that much is evident. That much is apparent. But at the same time, though, she is really, really popular. I wouldn't turn her heel anytime soon. But when people start to turn on her a little bit, like we saw with Seth Rollins, then yeah, pull the trigger. But when Rollins started to do, weird, questionable shit like this, people were like, oh, what the fuck? He's an asshole. Let's turn him heel. And they did. I wouldn't turn her heel quite yet, but this might have been designed to plant the seeds for that because it didn't really exactly put her in the best light. I already talked about John's first question. His second question, another question I got a lot of this week. So the Nightmare Collective is over and done with in AEW. Is this a sign that AEW brass are listening to the criticisms of fans, or was it just that they realized the gimmick was all about, or it was about as well received as a crocodile is around a group of zebras? That was a funny line there. Yeah, I feel like it's a bit of both. So Brandy did an interview, I guess, with maybe Brian Alvarez. I'm pretty sure she was on Wrestling Observer Radio talking about the gimmick and why it ended. Because she put out a video the other day, I feel like on Sunday maybe, teasing or hinting at that the Nightmare Collective was over because she took off. Okay, I don't want to say take off or retire. Don't, get your mind out of the gutter, people. She had her Nightmare Collective attire, the stupid hat, the gear, and then she was shown burning it. So that seemed to indicate that she was done with the gimmick. And she confirmed on the radio show that she is, which is absolutely for the best. The gimmick sucks. I mean, you can poop on Dark Order, and I have before as well. But the thing is, at least they're making an attempt to make people care. I like the Dark Order now. I like the whole Exalted One thing. Their matches are still a little boring. The Jurassic Express match, the Jurassic Express match, I was a little bored by on Dark this week. Even though it was well wrestled, the crowd was kind of dead for it by the end. That may have been because they taped it after Dynamite, but whatever the case may be, I thought it was a good match. I like the characters. The whole join Dark Order thing. If they get Matt Hardy, dude, it's all over. Like that's an absolute win for the group right there, which isn't set in stone yet, of course. But that being said, with the Nightmare Collective, there were zero redeeming qualities about that group. Brandy cannot fucking wrestle. She's terrible. She's not a great talker either, to be honest with you. Awesome Kong cannot wrestle anymore. She can't wrestle anymore at all. Brandy said in that interview that Awesome Kong wanted to wrestle more, and she wanted to face Chris Statlander and have like this big blow-off match. And we may not even see that at this point. I mean, I know she went off to go film Glow, and that was another reason why they ended the stable. But her body is thrashed. Like, we've known about this for years, but I didn't know the extent of it until now. It's like her character from Glow, but like literally in real life. She can't do shit anymore. So that sucks. And maybe that's why she hasn't really wrestled a whole lot on Dynamite and why her matches have been so short up to this point, why her matches have been so brief and cut short. The Mel character, I don't even know what she's about. Her match with Hikaru Shida last week on Dark was terrible. And Luther's a fucking loser. I don't care. Oh, he's a deathmatch legend in Japan. Like, who fucking cares, dude? Who gives a shit? That his debut is one of the funniest things I've seen on Dynamite in some time. Excalibur, it's like his new gimmick. To know people that no one else fucking knows. Jim Ross is like, who is this dude? And then Excalibur, for whatever reason, says, oh, that's the deathmatch legend, Luther. Like, who the fuck would know that? Who the fuck knows who this guy is? Now they're teasing the idea of him feuding with Jimmy Havoc. Get out of here. Who cares? I love Jimmy Havoc. I mean, maybe not love Jimmy Havoc, but he's grown on me. I like the character. I like the gimmick. His matches are good. He's a good wrestler. I know what they're going for with the whole deathmatch shit. It goes back to what I was saying earlier. Leave that shit in the fucking independent scene. I have no desire to see a Jimmy Havoc versus Luther match. No thank you. But yeah, I think it was a combination of everything you said, because she said that she wasn't digging it. Brandy Rhodes said that. I mean, they had Mel shave her head for this shit, so what does that tell you? I mean, honestly, if that was me, I'd be pissed, but, I mean, hair grows back, yeah, but how quickly? You know, she shaved her head for this dumb storyline, and now she's fucking bald for the next 6 months, or however long it's going to take for her to grow her hair back. I don't know, I just think that's silly, personally, and that sucks for her. The matches sucked, the gimmicks sucked, the promos sucked. My God, when Brandy said she wasn't digging it, and she acknowledged that she saw that fans weren't digging it, she wanted to end it. So, good on her for realizing that it wasn't working, the additions of Mel and Luther were not working. It was just a bunch of random people thrown together. And I know that's part of the appeal of some stables, like this new Righteous stable in Ring of Honor felt a little random to me with Vinny Marseglia when it first started, but it's kind of growing on me. He kind of works as a stable leader. It's kind of like a Wyatt family-like thing. This wasn't any of those things. This was just fucking random. Awesome Kong, Brandy Rhodes, some bald chick named Mel, and some Luther dude. Who cares? So anyway, I'm glad it's over. I'm glad they're listening to the fans as to how they can improve their product. They're not improving everything. I still think the wins and losses are like, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what goes into them aside from the wins and losses. Maybe I should know this, but like, for example, why is Kip Sabian, who is 3-1 by the way, in singles competition, number 5 in today's rankings under Kenny Omega, who is 0-0 in singles competition in 2020? How does that make any sense? How is Kenny Omega 4 on the rankings for the world title rankings, even though he has yet to have a single singles match in 2020? That makes no sense to me. So I would rather they just get rid of that shit. There hasn't been enough blowback to the rankings and, you know, the wins and loss records and shit for them to get rid of it altogether. That's the minority. I know I'm not in the majority on that, but I still think it's stupid. But yeah, there was a vast majority of fans who were not digging the Nightmare Collective shit. I'm glad they listened to the fans and got rid of it. Because, hey, you know what? This was WWE, and I'm not going to sit here and compare the two companies all day because there's a lot of stuff I wish AEW did more from WWE and vice versa. But for WWE, listen, people fucking shit on an angle. They've been shitting on the Rusev, Lana, Bobby Lashley garbage since day one. Vince is so fucking, you know, determined. And I know I'm saying fuck a lot on today's show, so I apologize. But you know what you're getting when you listen to my show. He is so determined to see this thing through for the last 5 months that he has not given up on it. I mean, that's just WWE for you. Specifically, that's not just WWE for you. That's Vince McMahon for you. He has an idea. He gives up on shit, but not because the fans gave up on it. He gives up on it because he loses interest. It's the exact opposite. The fans want to see it continued, and he just loses interest and it just drops all mention of it. Like Cedric Alexander. You know, he's a guy that was getting pushed for a cup of coffee last year, and then out of nowhere, he just disappears from the show. Now he's getting buried. He lost to fucking Riddick Moss in main event a couple weeks ago. How the hell does that happen? How do you lose to Riddick Moss on main event? Just call it a day, buddy. Just call it a day at that point. But anyway, yeah. So going back to what I was saying earlier, at least, you know, AEW is listening to their audience to an extent, and they're improving the stuff that people have an issue with, specifically the Nightmare Collective, which fucking sucked. And the Dark Order, too, they probably realized, hey, people aren't digging this gimmick. What can we do to heat them up and, you know, make them interesting? And they did with the joint Dark Order campaign. The vignettes were really well done. I don't really care to see Christopher Daniels as the leader of the Dark Order. But hey, Matt Hardy, consider me a fan of the Dark Order at that point. I mean, they're growing on me already, but that would be just the icing on top of the cake. John's third question here. SmackDown has felt incredibly flat for the last number of months. What do you think is the core issue? Bruce Pritchard, a lack of creative direction, or the company not giving a shit? I don't know if it's it might be Bruce Pritchard, who knows? Because they had Eric Bischoff there for a while, and the show wasn't unbearable, but then again, how much influence did Eric Bischoff really have? That's what I'm still struggling to find out, because they fired him months ago. But, like, I've heard conflicting reports that, like, he did stuff that Vince didn't like, or that he wasn't even writing the show at all. So, honestly, I have no idea what his role even was on that show. But anyway, with SmackDown, I mean, it's weird. It's had this opposite effect since they went to Fox. I liked a couple of the shows they were putting out in the first few weeks of 2020, but other than that, the show has just been a fucking chore to sit through since they moved to Fox. The bigger network, you would think they would put in more effort to make the show better. It's been worse. Literally, they have done the Roman Reigns Baron Corbin feud since the show fucking started. Since day one of SmackDown moving to Fox. Maybe not that launch episode, but the very next week, I'm telling you. That very next week, they made it, or maybe not the draft, but like the week after that, it was all about Corbin and Reigns. Jesus Christ. Like, man, that's bad. Like, the feud has not been good. Nobody cares. The matches aren't good. They just have this, they just aren't letting go of certain feuds. I mean, Raw has kind of the same issue with certain things, but like with SmackDown, Sheamus and Shorty G, why are they still doing this? They already had Sheamus beat him twice. Why would I want to see that continue? Why are they still doing Braun Strowman and Schinsky Nakamura? Nakamura looks like the biggest loser in the world. He has yet to win a match at all in the last like 2 or 3 months. Even when he was champion. And then Roman and Corbin is just downright deplorable. The feud has sucked. So there's really no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's been terrible. So, I mean, that's a big thing. Yeah, lack of creative direction. Not enough stars that are really worth giving a shit about. Like, I love Daniel Bryan. I'm glad they're doing well by The Fiend for the most part. But that's about it. Roman's doing his thing right now. I really have no desire to see him take the championship from Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania, even though he probably will. Baron Corbin I like, but the King shit is just, it's not a good gimmick at all. They don't really have much of a mid-card. It's like Braun Strowman, Shinsuke, and that's it. Cesaro's a fucking loser. Elias is winning more. He's getting over as a babyface. Honestly, can't really care at this point. I mean, they've damaged that guy so much, and they should have given him the championship, that IC title so many times. I just don't care at this point. I really don't. He's there. Apollo Crews is never on the show. He lost in 30 seconds last week. Heath Slater's a loser. Their tag team division's improving. I love Miz and Morrison being back. The New Day are entertaining. The Revival are on their way out. The Lucha House Party are losers. Heavy Machinery, I like what they're doing with Otis and Mandy. So again, it's not all bad, but the show is just a lot worse than it used to be. Because SmackDown was always like, okay, Raw was shit this week, but at least we can always count on SmackDown to be the better show. Not anymore. I mean, it's very uneven. I feel like Raw has a lot better people on their show. And the thing with Raw is, like, I feel like Raw is stacked with star power to the point where SmackDown feels just inferior in comparison. And that also might be due to the fact that, yeah, they have a lot better people, but it's also how they're booking said people. SmackDown has some good people too, and the booking of these people is just abysmal. Bobby Roode, Dolph Ziggler, who cares? Like, I like Bobby Roode, but they've given me zero reason to give a shit about the dude. The Usos are back, great. Sheamus is back, great. That's just, the bad outweighs the good, I feel like. You know, I feel like they have a lot of good stuff. Bayley, I mean, she's not really lighting the world on fire as women's champion. Carmella's number one contender. Naomi's over, but that's about it. Sasha's always getting hurt. She's never really around at all. Dana Brooke, no one gives a fuck. Lacey was getting over. I don't know what the hell happened to her. She's been off the show for weeks since the Rumble. I guess she doesn't care that Bayley cheated to beat her at the Rumble, whatever. Daniel Bryan's there, and he's Daniel Bryan, but I don't know. I feel like the whole show needs a massive overhaul, because for a show that was supposed to be the flagship show, for a show that's getting, slightly more viewers than Raw, like, I think a lot of people, myself included, thought that SmackDown would get way bigger ratings on Fox, and they did initially for like a week or two. But the ratings aren't much different than they were on USA. And this is Fox. Like, they're getting a couple 100,000 more viewers on SmackDown, or rather on Fox, than they were on USA. But look, it's still 2.5 million people. What about the projections that they'd be doing 3-4 million people every week? That's not happening. Like, it's not that big. It's not that big of a margin where it's like, oh, SmackDown is screaming Raw in the ratings. It's not that close at all. I mean, it's not that far at all. They're very close in the ratings. I would not honestly be shocked at some point to see SmackDown's ratings continue to go down and go below Raw's, even though Raw is still on USA. At this point, they should have just kept the fucking show on USA if this is how bad the show is going to be. Because at least there they had a better sense of creative direction. It wasn't amazing a year ago, don't get it twisted, but it was more tolerable than it is right now. Let's see. Next question, also from John. Non-wrestling related, but not sure if you watched the Oscars or not. But what are your thoughts on Parasite winning so many awards? Don't know if you saw the movie or not, but just curious. I don't really have much an opinion on it. I know Alexis was pissed. I didn't watch the Oscars. She didn't either, but she heard about it because she was very happy, as was I, that Joaquin Phoenix had won Best Actor for Joker, as he should have, because he was amazing in that movie. That was a great movie. For Movie of the Year, I'm very surprised it was Parasite. I heard it would be 1917, I think was the lead, was the runner, I wrote a whole article with the fucking betting odds for the Oscars like a month ago, and I feel like the leading candidate was 1917. I heard a lot of great things about the movie, haven't seen it. I've actually heard of 1917. I have not heard of Parasite at all. It won Best Picture. I think it won Best Foreign Film. And Alexis was pissed about that. She was like, oh, how can a movie that won... I mean, honestly, I can see where they're coming from, having a movie win so many awards. If it's that good, then it's that good. I just haven't seen the movie. I've heard nothing about the movie. I've heard no one talk about the movie. If it's a foreign film, great. I'm not saying it should be disqualified because it's not an American film, but like, I've never seen it. Alexa said she might watch it she wants to make a thing of hers to watch all the movies that win Best Picture every year and whatever, and I mean, maybe I'll watch it with her then. I don't even know what it's about. So I'll probably check it out, and so check back with me in a little while after we probably watch it. But I was just surprised. I really thought 1917 had that thing locked down, but I guess not, because Parasite won all these awards, and it must be a great movie, but foreign films don't really do it for me personally, just because if it's in a different language, I don't want to have to go through this sounds terrible, but like, I don't want to go through the fucking, the trouble of having to read the subtitles. I mean, that's just me. I mean, that's how I enjoy movies. I don't like to read while I'm watching a movie. For some of it, maybe. For the whole thing, that's just not my deal. A lot of people would say differently, but that's just me. That's my personal preference. It's not like a thing where, oh, it's in Spanish. I don't like when it's in Spanish. It has nothing to do with the language itself. It's just, if it's not in English and it makes it harder for me to understand, then it hinders my experience of the movie. That's just me personally. But no, I have not seen the movie. I don't really have many thoughts on Parasite winning aside from why. But I guess after I watch it, maybe it'll make more sense. At noob_n_co 1991 push repackage release. Let's bring these back. Like I said, RJ brought it back last week. He's got another question coming up soon with push repackage release. I love push repackage release, so give me more of these. This one's easy as shit, though. This one is fucking easy peasy. Push repackage release. Sonya Deville, Asuka, or Lana. Clearly, you're going to release Lana either way. If you're not, there's something wrong with you. So Lana, hit the bricks, honey. You're out of here. It comes down to Sonya and Asuka. I mean, of the two, I think Asuka's infinitely better, so I would repackage Sonya into what? I don't know. Maybe a babyface? I'm not really sure. Honestly, take the whole MMA shit away. I don't really like the whole MMA aspect of her gimmick. I know she does MMA in real life. She looks like a pansy, though, compared to Ronda Rousey and Shayna. It just doesn't work. So repackage that, get rid of the MMA shit, and push Asuka because she's awesome. At Iwagu91, their question was, your thoughts on New Japan Pro Wrestling returning to MSG this August? I love it and I hate it. I love it because it's cool they're going back to MSG and they have enough confidence they can do well on their own. I mean, I think a big reason why MSG sold out for that G1 Supercard show was because of New Japan. It also sold out, you got to keep in mind, because it seemed like when they announced the show that Omega would be there, the Bucks would be there, Cody would be there, Paige would be there, and then they weren't because they left for AEW with the onset of the year. So you got to remember that too. I don't think the attendance will sell out. And it's also, I hate it because this is the second part of it. It's the same weekend as SummerSlam. That's going to hinder business too, because for people like me who could go to both, if you live in the Northeast, Boston to New York is maybe 4 hours, which isn't that far at all for most people, because you drive 4 hours, you're not even out of the state. But here in Connecticut, New York, Boston, we're all relatively smaller states. I'm not going. I would love to go. I know John tweeted me about it the other day. I would love to. Unfortunately, we are planning on going to SummerSlam that weekend, so we can't. I'm going to TakeOver. It's the same night as TakeOver, so I'm going to the TakeOver show, going to SummerSlam. That's probably about it. Going home after that. Probably not going to SmackDown or Raw or whatever. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the show taking place at MSG. Should be cool. I won't be watching it. Not live anyway. I won't be there. But it's cool for the brand. It kind of felt like they dipped down a little bit after the Elite left, and I heard their U.S. tour numbers weren't great. But, hey, if they have enough confidence that they can do well in MSG, more power to them. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that show goes. At Iwagu91's second question, did you know that Brock Lesnar put an end to Kofi Kingston's consistent streak of finding ways to survive elimination at a Royal Rumble match, as well as Charlotte's victory, making her and Ric Flair the first father-daughter duo to win a Royal Rumble match? Yes, I did hear about both things. It didn't really dawn on me in the moment, but the Charlotte Rick thing, I know I heard from someone somewhere. How can WWE not mention that? That's pretty cool. The Kofi thing, I didn't know it. I didn't really realize it in the moment. And then after Kofi got bumped, Alexis had said, oh, no cool spot this year or whatever. I'm like, oh shit, I didn't even really think about that. So yeah, I was aware of that. It doesn't matter. At this point, the whole Kofi thing, it got old years ago. It was cool that he did it, but a lot of the spots that he's been doing in recent years have been very underwhelming. And he did almost, he could always come up with something new, but it was more important that they had him stay serious and do shit with Brock Lesnar. So I liked that aspect. And it's a streak that if it ends, it's not really that big of a deal because it just makes him look like a loser, continuing to avoid elimination but never winning. So I don't really care that it ended this year, to be honest. I already talked about this, but did you hear the Nightmare Collection has been canceled? Yes, and I'm glad because it's fucking terrible. Considering that even Edge has returned and combined with Terry Funk cheating retirement several times, is it now becoming hard to be annoyed by fans wondering if retired wrestlers like Stone Cold and Shawn Michaels, ignoring Crown Jewel, will ever come back? You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It's hard to be annoyed by people that are like, oh, CM Punk, or not, CM Punk, but like, oh, Stone Cold's coming back, Shawn Michaels is coming back. You can't really be like, oh, shut the fuck up, they're never coming back, because they have, though. Shawn Michaels did come back. You can't ignore Crown Jewel. He came back for a match. I don't think he's going to wrestle again, but you never know. I mean, I never thought he would wrestle again after 2010, but he did. Never thought Edge would come back, but he did. Didn't think Daniel Bryan would be cleared by WWE, and he was. So, honestly, I can't be annoyed by it. I said years ago, like, oh, these people talking with Daniel Bryan like he's going to be brought back for this or that. It's not going to happen. Give it up. And then he was. So I shut up immediately. And when it comes to all these other people, like, I don't think Stone Cold's coming back. I think that's pretty set in stone. But hey, we never thought Edge was coming back either, so who knows? And that was a choice. I mean, Stone Cold, it's a choice. It's not a medical thing where he wants to and he can't. He very well could, I guess. They would be morons not to clear him. I just don't think it's happening because he doesn't want to, and why would he? His career ended well enough. Why ruin that by coming back for a match that may or may not be good? So anyway, I don't think it's happening. But yeah, you can't be annoyed by those people because we've been told now that anything is possible. So you are absolutely right. At Jeremy8911 from Twitter, if Drew McIntyre wins the championship at WrestleMania, could you see his first feud as champion being with Bobby Lashley, managed by MVP? Well, first of all, I love the idea of Lashley and MVP being a pairing. They were in TNA alongside Kenny King, and I thought they worked amazingly well together. That was like the peak of Bobby Lashley's wrestling career, was in TNA from like 2014 to like maybe 2016, 2017. He was doing amazing work at that point as a heel. He was fantastic. And MVP was a great mouthpiece. I mean, the mouthpiece thing with Lashley only lasted about, 6 months to a year. Not even that, I think. So I'm not really... I'm not saying MVP was the sole reason for his success, but it absolutely kicked it off because Lashley wasn't cutting many promos early on, and MVP did the talking for him, and it worked. And if they're going to bring back MVP in a regular role like they have recently, the match with Rey Mysterio, when he's done with wrestling, but he did the VIP lounge on Monday, which I really liked, bring him back as a manager. The guy's a great talker, so I would love to see that. I don't think they will. I think Bobby as a first challenger for Drew is underwhelming. Right now, anyway, just because... At the moment, Bobby means nothing. I mean, he got pinned in that triple threat last week. He got beat by Ricochet this week. I like Bobby a lot, and I want him to have that Brock match, but the guy is not a threat whatsoever. I mean, unless they go with a Brock rematch, which I really hope they don't do, I'm not even really... I mean, AJ's an option. Randy Orton's an option to face Drew right after WrestleMania. There's a lot more options that are not named Bobby Lashley. Let's put it that way. Andrade, if he drops the United States Championship, would mean more than Bobby. Unless they really heat up Bobby between now and April, I don't really think that's going to happen. I mean, it would be a nice filler feud for Drew, and he would obviously win, but I don't want to see Lashley wasted like that any longer. So I would build him up over time. But to the second part of your question here, I would absolutely love to see him reunite with MVP. I think that'd be a great use of both guys. Speaking of McIntyre, second question. Imagine if Drew McIntyre does beat Brock Lesnar for the championship, and down the road we get a feud between him and Seth Rollins where Seth fails to beat Drew but for the title, but Murphy instead beats Drew for the championship. I don't see that happening. I do not see Murphy becoming... did I say Buddy Murphy? I mean, it's just Murphy now. I don't see Murphy being the one to beat Drew for the title, but hey, stranger things have happened, so... that would make for a great story that Rollins can't do it, but Murphy could. I think that'd be cool, and then you could build to Murphy and Rollins, which is inevitable. We all know that. You got McIntyre in the mix. So, yeah, I don't hate the idea. I just think it's unlikely. I don't think they do that. I think they either break him up before then, or they do that, but they just don't have Murphy win the championship. I just can't imagine Murphy being WWE champion. I just can't. I mean, the guy's awesome. I think he could be at that level. If they pushed him right enough, they would really have to push him hard. I just don't see that happening, but it would make for a very interesting scenario nonetheless. At BASMRMSW, their question was from Twitter. Should Shayna Baszler beat Becky Lynch at WrestleMania? I say yes. I mean, I could see a scenario. Honestly, it's not set in stone that she's winning. Because like I've said before, I could see a scenario where Nia Jax comes back after WrestleMania and feuds with Becky for the belt because they have that history from a year ago. The issue there is, what do you do with Shayna if she gets beat right out of the gate? Shayna was this unstoppable force in NXT for well over 2 years. How does she get brought up to Raw and then lose in her first major match? Now, granted, she did lose in her first opportunity, which people tend to forget, at the NXT Women's Championship 2 years ago to Ember Moon. She lost that first match. She won the second or third match or whatever it was at TakeOver New Orleans. So it's not like she was ever undefeated in NXT for any stretch of time. I thought it was questionable, but it didn't really matter in the long run. So could they do the same thing with Shayna on the main roster? Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like you got to strike while the iron is hot with her. A Nia-Becky feud makes sense from a storyline standpoint. I have no desire to see it. I don't want to see Nia Jax in the title picture. I just feel like, I fear that's what's going to happen. I'm not even really sure. I feel like there was someone else, maybe Bianca Belair, that I was thinking of feuding with Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's Championship, which would also be cool. So they could have Becky retain, but I feel like with Shayna, what do you do with her then? Like if she loses? It's like Cain Velasquez. They bring him in, they push him to the top, he gets a championship match, he loses, and that's it. Like we haven't seen the guy since. So with that being said, I feel like it's gotta be Shayna winning. So yeah, I think she should beat Becky at WrestleMania. It's a big WrestleMania debut for her to beat the woman that beat Ronda Rousey and to end her championship reign after 1 year. It would be a very big deal. At the Wrestle Guy from Twitter, Sal's first question was, do you think if Goldberg won to go on to face Roman Reigns instead of the Fiend at Super Showdown he's talking about here, would that ruin all this build and investment that went into the Fiend throughout the last year? Yes, it would. Yes, it would. I'm not saying they have to have, they can't have the Fiend lose, but why put the championship on him for 4 or 5 months if you're just going to have him lose right so close to WrestleMania? Now, I know they did the same thing with Kevin Owens. He was champion for like fucking 7 or 8 months. He was champion for a while. And then they had him get beat for the belt by by Goldberg, actually. But at least that made sense because they had another feud lined up. He was already doing the thing with Jericho, and they should have faced off a Mania for the Universal title, but that was a WWE call, whatever. It wasn't really that big of a deal. So with the Fiend, though, they put a lot more effort into booking the Fiend than they did Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens was a weak champion. He was always made to look like he couldn't win on his own. He wasn't a very strong champion. The Fiend has been. His matches aren't great, but he's beaten Daniel Bryan decisively. He's beaten The Miz decisively. He beat Seth Rollins decisively. He beat Finn Balor decisively. He's been champion for months. I think it would be a mistake to have him lose so close to WrestleMania. It's a Goldberg of all people. It's a big win for Wyatt if he wins, and I can see, Goldberg and Reigns at WrestleMania. And yeah, I honestly do want to see that match. I don't want to see it for the championship of WrestleMania, because it's going to be Goldberg-Brock 2.0, where Roman's going to win. So I don't even really want to see that at this point. Maybe down the road at SummerSlam or something, but not for the championship. I don't want to see Roman beat the Fiend for it either, but at least it makes more sense. And Roman even said as such in an interview the other day. Someone asked him, would you rather face the Fiend or Goldberg at WrestleMania for the championship if you had an option? He said, honestly, first of all, he said he just wants the title back, so he's going to give that non-answer. But he also said, he gave a pretty decisive answer after that. He said, listen, no disrespect to Goldberg, and it would be cool to have a match with him, but I'm focused on the future, building up people that I'm going to be sharing a locker room with for years to come. And I respect the hell out of that answer because he's right. He's not wrong there. So I hope it's Roman and Wyatt. Even that doesn't really do much for me. But hey, it's better than ruining the Fiend. And what the fuck do you even do with the Fiend? The Fiend versus The Undertaker, I heard people talking about. I mean, I guess, but I don't know. That doesn't really do much for me at this point. First of all, Taker's a fucking old ass man. And maybe if they do Sting, hey, you know what? I would be the biggest hypocrite in the world if I said no Taker and Sting, or, no Taker and Sting, but no Fiend and Taker. The thing is that Fiend and Taker just comes completely out of nowhere. And I don't want to see him drop the championship for a match with Undertaker. So Sting and Taker, I mean, even that's a stretch because both guys are in their 50s and it would be a fucking race to who can ever get their AARP card out first. But I don't know. I don't really want to see that. I don't. So Yes, I hope Reigns wins the Elimination Chamber or whatever. The Fiend retains, and we get that match at WrestleMania. So, yes, it would ruin the Fiend if he dropped the championship so close to the show of shows. Sal's second question, how would you feel about Randy Orton and Edge main eventing WrestleMania over Drew McIntyre versus Brock Lesnar, The Fiend versus Goldberg, or The Fiend or Goldberg versus Roman Reigns? It's Edge's first Mania back, and I believe it will be the hottest feud going into WrestleMania. I think any of those three matches could main event. No. I mean, yeah, I could see what you're saying. Yeah, it could be a great feud, but I really have no desire to see that in the main event. Edge and Randy Orton, I mean, we can't complain about, Goldberg and Brock facing off a Mania, and then we're getting Orton and Edge in the main event. I mean, it's going to be a great feud. So far, it's been great. I'm very happy to see Edge back. But both guys are like veterans now. They got to be focusing on the future. It's got to be Drew and Brock, not even Roman and Wyatt, because I feel like that's too predictable. There's a better chance Brock retains than Wyatt retains. I mean, it's got to be Drew and Brock. Orton and Edge, unless the feud is white hot, then no, because there's nothing on the line. Like, had they ever done a straight-up main event at WrestleMania that wasn't for a championship where the stakes weren't high? Yes, I know they did Rock and John Cena 8 years ago, but it's the fucking Rock and John Cena. I mean, that's a dream match. Edge and Orton is not a dream match. I mean, it's a feud I've wanted to see for a long time. They're not selling the type of tickets that Rock and Cena did after a year build, so let's not go there. What before that? Bam Bam Bigelow versus Lawrence Taylor? Like, unless there's something on the line here, and even then, I mean, unless it's a championship, I can't see that going on last. So no, it's got to be Drew and Brock. Even the Fiend versus Roman, that can't go on last. I mean, people are just going to shit him out of the... I'm not even opposed to Roman winning the championship after all this time, but, like, people are going to be, like, Roman's the champion, cool way to close the show out. Whereas, like, Drew's the champion, holy shit, this is a new era. Like, they got to go with Drew Brock. There's no question in my mind. There's no doubt in my mind it's got to be Brock and Drew in the main event of WrestleMania 36. His third question here, John Cena has confirmed to be at WrestleMania, but there really hasn't been any signs to him having a match. Do you think he ends up being the host of WrestleMania? No. I mean, I guess. So, Sal sent this in yesterday evening, and then it was announced mere hours later on WWE Backstage that he's going to be on SmackDown in 2 weeks in Boston. So, I don't think he's popping up on SmackDown to announce that he's hosting WrestleMania. And the thing is, like, if they were going to have him host WrestleMania, why not have him? I mean, I guess Alexa Bliss hosted last year, but, like, he was there at the show last year. He didn't wrestle. He did that quick segment. Have him host last year. He didn't host last year, so that to me means that he's not going to host, and he'll probably have a match. He'll be on that SmackDown, likely to set up a match. It's the day after Super Showdown, which is worrisome because that's where the Roman and Corbin feud ends. So I'm very, very worried that it's going to end up being Corbin and Cena. Their first match was no good. Cena won, and I don't think Cena's coming back to put over King Corbin the same way that Kurt Angle did last year. I don't see that happening. That does not excite me at all. The issue with Cena coming back to SmackDown is that there really isn't many intriguing options. SmackDown needs John Cena, but the problem is he's faced and beaten pretty much everyone on that show. I'd rather see him go back to Raw, to be honest, even though Raw doesn't really need him right now. I mean, Cena and McIntyre is a match that makes sense. They're not going to do that because McIntyre's already tied up. I mean, I'd rather see Cena and Andrade than fucking Cena and Corbin, or Cena versus... Who else is on Raw? Murphy? Rollins? I mean, they've had a million matches, so probably not Rollins, but, Orton, no. Edge, no. I mean, there's more people on Raw is what I'm saying than on SmackDown. Because on SmackDown, what are your options? Roman Reigns, and we know he's facing Wyatt, so it's not going to happen, but we've already seen Cena and Roman, and Roman won. So what's the need for a rematch? Cena and Wyatt. Wyatt never really got that. I mean, he got a big win over Cena, quote unquote, at the pay-per-view after WrestleMania 6 years ago, but no one really remembers that, and nor should they because the match sucked. I do not want to see The Fiend and John Cena. Absolutely not. I know they had the whole Cena 17-time thing. That would be even worse than fucking Roman winning the belt. That's even worse. So no. And they don't have great chemistry. So no to that. No to Corbin. No to Roman. Goldberg, I mean, I guess. Is that even really a dream match? I mean, maybe. I don't know. Taker, God, no. I do not want to see Cena Taker too. Sheamus, been there, done that. Miz, been there, done that, even though he's in the tag team division right now. Nakamura, been there, done that. Strowman, they've done the match before. I don't even really want to see that. I mean, Cena's literally faced everyone on SmackDown, and this is the thing. The guy's been gone for 2 years or so, and even when he comes back, it feels like he's already faced everyone. There's no big matches left for John Cena. Samoa Joe would be a bigger match for Cena WrestleMania than fucking Corbin. Who cares? Honestly, I got to go with what other people are saying, Velveteen Dream. I know it's not likely because he already came back to NXT and he's feuding with Undisputed Era, but maybe they swerve people and they want to give NXT more exposure, so they have Velveteen Dream face John Cena. That would be awesome. That's the only match I really want to see Cena in at WrestleMania. Nothing else really intrigues me. Not at all. I want to see him have a match on the show. I just don't know who else you have him face from SmackDown. SmackDown's roster is like depleted, first of all. Second of all, of the people that are on the show, he's already faced most of them and beaten or lost to most of them. So why do I even really want to see him face any of those people? So I hope it ends up being Dream by a long shot. It won't probably. Maybe there's more people I'm not thinking of, but who else is even on SmackDown? I feel like it's Roman and Corbin. That's all I'm thinking of is Roman and maybe Daniel Bryan. I got to give credit to, at Jeremy8911. He actually tweeted out this morning, maybe what if it's Bryan and Cena at WrestleMania? You know, I know Bryan's a babyface, but hey, honestly, I would love to see that match. I would love to see it. He said a little heel John Cena. I don't know if that's going to happen, but he also said, you know, you can have Bryan tap out Cena for the first time in like 15 years. I also don't see that happening either. But I think it'd be a great match. It's something relatively fresh. They never had a rematch. I mean, the thing is, if Cena beats Bryan, it's stupid, but it's not like damaging like it would be for Corbin or someone that's not already well established by this point. For Bryan, it doesn't really matter. I mean, Bryan, I would, have him beat Cena again, but I wanted to see that match last year for the WWE title, and then Kofi got hot, so it didn't really matter. Yeah, honestly, Bryan and Cena. Bryan and Cena I like a lot. I like the idea of that match. So yeah, if not Velveteen Dream, then Bryan would be good, but again, I'm not really counting on that just because I don't think they're going to do it. But yeah, they never really had a rematch after their awesome SummerSlam 2013 match, so why the hell not? At @RJ_Marceau, Mr. Marceau's first question was, again with the push package release, Kaylee Ray, Mia Yim, and Shotzi Blackheart. This is a great one. Alexis agreed with me on this, but release Mia Yim, repackage, yeah, she said push Shotzi Blackheart, but she's just not ready for that yet? Yeah, I guess push Shotzi Blackheart because she's getting over, so yeah, I guess push her. Repackage Kaylee Ray. I don't know how you repackage her. I think she's great as is. She's a very good heel. Maybe put her on NXT. I mean, it's just really the lesser of two evils here because Shotzi, I don't know. I don't want to repackage her either because I think her gimmick is even better than Kaylee Ray's. So I would say, again, push Kaylee Ray, release Mia Yim, repackage, or rather push Shotzi Blackheart. Do you think Rhea Ripley challenging Charlotte Flair, second question starts off here, before Portland seems silly for WrestleMania? If she waited till the Raw after Portland, they would still have a month and a half to build a feud. I mean, they can't have Charlotte out there for weeks not revealing who she's going to face. I mean, yeah, she could have said, I'm waiting until after Portland, but that would make it a little too obvious. So she kind of had to come out with it early. And yeah, it does seem silly, but it's not really that silly, though, because I feel like it's not set in stone that she's facing Rhea. I mean, it's very likely. It's just as likely that Bianca wins the title and we get a three-way at WrestleMania. Or Bianca gets screwed or something. It's a non-finish, and then we get a three-way at WrestleMania. I love the chemistry all three of them had on NXT last week. Bianca, I've said it before, I really have no interest in seeing her in the title picture. In NXT, because we've already seen her a million times by this point. She's always lost. But her and Ripley have a good dynamic. Bianca and Charlotte have a good dynamic. Bianca's probably on her way up to the main roster anyway. So I don't really think it's set in stone that we're getting Ripley and Charlotte straight up. It'll probably be Charlotte and Ripley one-on-one, but they're teasing the idea that it doesn't, whoever wins in Portland faces Charlotte at WrestleMania. So I'm betting that it's going to be Ripley, as most people are. And then, yeah, you just go from there. So it's not silly because, I mean, she's not facing Bayley or Becky. Let's just say that right now. We know she's not facing Bayley or Becky. Why even tease it? We know she's going for the NXT Women's Championship. It's just more a matter of who. Who do you have? I know, Rhea challenging Charlotte flat out is weird. They should have had Charlotte say, hey, I'll face the winner of your match at Portland. That would have been a bit better. But I understand why they did it so soon because a lot of people already figured that, hey, she's probably facing the NXT Women's Champion because we've already seen Charlotte. We've already seen Charlotte versus Bayley and Becky a million times. At Scarlet1, I think we're going to close out with, no, we have questions from at E13A as well. But anyway, at Scarlet1's questions, first one being, best and worst of Wednesday Night Wars, number 17. There really wasn't much worse, to be honest with you. I thought both shows last week were good. NXT I thought was a great show. A very good show, actually. Dynamite was also good. The only thing on the show I didn't really care for, first of all, Britt Baker losing was weird. But it furthered her heel turn, so I get it. The only thing on the show I didn't really care for at all was the Joey Janela Kip Sabian match. I don't care about the feud. I don't care about Joey Janela. Kip Sabian is cool, but the feud itself doesn't really do much for me. So that was really the only thing in either show I didn't really care for at all. Otherwise, they were both great shows. What do you know about Cody Hall and his current situation over making a coronavirus joke that caused him to lose bookings in Japan? Yeah, he made a dumb racist joke. I mean, the guy's not a racist. He was trying to be funny. I really don't see the big deal around this, and I don't, blame the promotions for, costing him his bookings and not booking him anymore. Because, yeah, he shouldn't have said what he said. It was a stupid thing to say, is what it was. It wasn't like, oh my God, burn this guy over the coals, blah, blah, blah. Like, he said a dumb joke. Let's face it, probably a lot of people have made, but you can't be saying that shit in the position that he's in, being a wrestler, wrestling over in Japan. He can't be saying that shit. He apologized. He realized it was a dumb thing to say, and that's it. That's all you got to do. I'm not saying that he shouldn't have lost bookings. Yeah, honestly, I don't blame him. I don't blame those promotions for not booking him because it's a pretty sensitive thing. It's killing a lot of people right now. He's wrestling over in Japan. It's not like he was wrestling in America and they canceled his bookings. That might be a different story. But the Japan bookings, I totally get it. So it's a non-issue in my opinion. I feel like he apologized. We're good. They did what they had to do, and we're moving on. What did you make of the XFL's debut? I thought it was great. I said this in a whole video. If you want my complete thoughts on it, I did a video that's doing pretty good numbers, which is cool, here on the channel a couple days ago on Sunday to be specific. I watched the first game, the Defenders versus, the Dragons on Saturday. Great game. I thought it was, I'm not a football fan at all. I said this a million times in that video. But I thought they had a great debut. There was a great game, and it hooked me. And even Alexis wanted to watch the game with me, so I thought that was a good sign as well. And then I watched the Guardians, and she caught the first half of it before she left for work. We watched the Guardians, what is it? The fucking Guardians of, who did they face? Guardians versus who? The Vipers on Sunday morning. Something popped up on my laptop, too. I was trying to close there, so I was distracted. But, no, I thought that was a good game, too. I thought it was a very good debut. I'll be watching probably only the Guardians games going forward. I can't really devote 3 hours every weekend afternoon to watching the games. But, I'll record them. I'll watch them for the most part. The Guardians games, they won last week. That was a good game, too. I thought they're trying to be a different enough from the NFL, which is good, but not in a way where it's, like, forced, where it feels forced, The games were good. It was entertaining. You can hear the coaches and the players, which is cool. You can hear the people in the that are going over the plays, like, oh, was this whatever? Like the guy that with the Xbox controller, when they were going over like the instant replay and stuff, you could hear what they were saying. I thought that was cool. So yeah, I thought it was a really strong debut. The ratings are in. They did well there as well, and I'm looking forward to what else they can produce going forward. Have you heard about Tony Khan apparently becoming more hands-on with AEW Creative? I mean, yeah, I heard that. What does that mean, though? And should I care? I mean, the product is still good. The creative is still good. It hasn't changed drastically from a few months ago. I mean, it doesn't really... I don't know. I don't really honestly care. I mean, unless the product is drastically different, unless the storylines start to suck, like, shouldn't he be hands-on? I mean, the guy's the owner of the company, and he's a big wrestling fan, so it's not like he has no idea what he's doing. And so far, the show has been largely good, so I have no issue with him being more hands-on. I mean, isn't Vince hands-on all the time? Like, I mean, I don't know. I just don't really see what's a big story about that. Like, oh, breaking news, Tony Khan makes a decision. Like, okay, like I feel like that's normal. Anyway, their last question here. Silly question, but on Raw, why did Becky Lynch hijack the ambulance just to drive herself to the hospital, aka the local medical facility anyway? Does she not like riding in the back seat? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe she didn't want to feel like she was depending on those people to drive her, and she wanted to drive herself. Why wouldn't you just let them drive you? Like, I don't know. She wanted to feel self-sufficient, so she drove herself, even though the vehicle wasn't hers. I don't know. The whole thing was weird. I wasn't a fan of how they portrayed Becky on Monday. Final three questions from E13A. First one being non-wrestling related question, continuing on with the Star Wars discussion. What do you make of the Star Wars fan base? It's probably up there with wrestling as one of the most polarizing fan bases out there. No one hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans. No one hates wrestling more than wrestling fans. So I feel like there's a lot of similarities there. I mean, people ripped apart The Last Jedi, and to an extent, rightfully so, because it wasn't a great movie. I mean, I enjoyed it, but I can get where people didn't like it, and I honestly had issues with it, too, after watching it back a couple months ago. But it's a very passionate fan base. So if nothing else, they're passionate. A lot like wrestling fans. You could say what you want about it, and, oh, the franchise sucks, it's awesome, blah, blah, blah. Regardless, if you like Star Wars, odds are you're pretty passionate about it. So I will say that. What's the verdict on Shinsuke Nakamura in WWE? I think he's done well, not nearly as well as he should have. I thought he would be a bigger deal. But then again, I wasn't watching his work in New Japan. Honestly, I think a bigger deal would be Okada coming over and then being given the treatment that Nakamura is. That would be a fucking joke. Nakamura is great, but the guy was doing the mid-card shit in New Japan anyway. Honestly, I was thinking about this after you sent in this question. I think people got their hopes a little too high after that Sami Zayn match because it was so good. Literally nothing else he's done since then has come close to topping it. I mean, he's very good, but he's not like the greatest of all time. He was doing the mid-card shit in New Japan for years. Yeah, he's a former IWGP Heavyweight Champion. Fucking 10 years ago. He's been a mid-card guy for the longest time, which is why he came over to WWE, because he was bored creatively in New Japan. He did everything. He faced everyone. He held all the titles, so, why not? And it was probably more money, and he has a lesser schedule, and, he doesn't really, not lesser schedule, but, he's not going as hard as he would have in Japan. It's not as hard-hitting. That he's not, doing the strong style anymore, which is ironic, because he still calls himself the king of strong style. But I think he's done well. He's not a bust. EC3 has been a fucking bust. That's a waste, because they've done nothing with the guy. Nakamura, though, yeah, he's been disappointing, but he's not been the worst NXT call-up ever. I know, I think RJ said that to me one time. I completely disagree. Completely. The guy should be way more over than he is right now, and he should be more successful. Let's look at it this way. He's gotten countless WWE Championship opportunities on pay-per-view. He wrestled for the championship at WrestleMania. He won the Royal Rumble fucking match. How many people can say that? He won the Royal Rumble match. He's a former two-time United States champion and a former Intercontinental champion. Now, the reigns weren't great, but a championship's a championship. So he's not the worst call-up ever. Let's not get it twisted. Yeah, disappointing for sure. They should not have had him lose to Jinder and lose to AJ a million times. That really killed any momentum he had, and he's not been the same since, and that was 2 years ago. But he's not been a bust. He's not been a waste. He's been wasted to an extent, and they could be doing a lot more with him. But, the guy has still been very successful, and he's still over even as a heel. So, they could be doing more, but it's not, nearly as bad as people make it out to be. That's just my opinion, though. Final question of the day, also from @U13A. Will Ricochet shock the world by defeating Brock Lesnar in that one country? And how will the WWE Universe feel if the WrestleMania main event becomes Drew McIntyre versus Ricochet? Now, that's a silly question. I know Scarlet One said that her question was silly, but that's an even sillier question. We know Ricochet's not winning. Why would he? That makes no sense. Drew and Ricochet, we've seen the match before. Let's say Ricochet wins the title. Brock gets suspended and they have to take the title off of him. I don't know. Not that he would get suspended because the policy shit, the whatever, the drug policy, wellness policy doesn't apply to him apparently, but whatever. They have to replace him with someone. They give the belt to Ricochet. Okay. They've had great matches. We've seen Drew beat Ricochet a million times, and he chucked him out of the Rumble in 10 seconds, so not a very exciting WrestleMania match for the Universal or the WWE title. And I love Ricochet, but they've done nothing to build this guy up, aside from the last couple of weeks. He's been rolling recently, but before that, he was directionless as shit. The guy was never, he was on the show, but he was losing whenever it mattered most. He lost to this guy, he lost to that guy. He was floundering. So to give him the title out of nowhere like they did with Jinder a couple of years ago makes absolutely no sense. And yeah, it was an issue with Jinder because he sucked and Ricochet is great, but it still doesn't make any sense. From a booking standpoint, you just can't have someone go from losing all these matches to suddenly winning the WWE title and expecting people to take him seriously. It doesn't work like that, so it's not going to happen, and even if it did, people would be like, that's a joke, because Drew and Brock is a way more appealing main event. And that's going to do it, guys, for episode 324 of AskGSM. I'm here today for February 12th, 2020. Thank you guys, as always, for sending in questions to the show. You can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Leave a question on the post, that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So with all that being said, guys, have an awesome rest of your week. Enjoy Valentine's Day on Friday. I don't know if I'll be watching SmackDown Live. I probably shouldn't be, because Alexis and I, it comes down to two things. We might either go see, not because we want to see it, just because it'd be funny as hell, go see Sonic the Hedgehog, or, what is it, Fantasy Island? She said she wanted to see that. I have no idea what that is, so maybe that, but we're seeing one of the two movies on Friday. And then we're going out to dinner, and then, whatever else, a night out in the town. So I'm not even sure if we'll be back for SmackDown next week. I kind of want to, just to see the date between Otis and Mandy, but I can always catch up on that on Twitter. But anyway, guys, enjoy Valentine's Day on Friday. Have a great rest of your week. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.